Good morning. I hope you took a cup of tea. I am glad that tea is the only non-jealous beverage that brings people together over a bottle of beer and water. And you can see on our tables we have bottles of water and not tea. So tea is non-jealous, and I'm glad to be associated with tea. I would like to take you briefly through Mombasa Tea Auction. East Africa Tea Trade Association is the auction organizer and the manager of the largest tea auction on earth, not just in Africa. It is the only auction that offers multi-origin teas from 10 African countries. That is Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, DRC, Mozambique, Malawi, Ethiopia, and lastly, Madagascar. So Mombasa Tea Auction sets pace for global tea trade because Kenya has predominantly remained the largest tea exporter in the world, the third largest tea producer in the world after India. Unfortunately, we do not consume what we produce like Indians, and I have to congratulate India as a country because you consume almost 90% of what you produce, which is the reverse of what happens in Kenya, where 95% of Kenyan tea production is exported to 96 various countries. So it means the Mombasa Tea Auction sets pace for global tea prices, and anything that happens in Mombasa Tea Auction basically affects the global tea trade. So we offer tea through the Mombasa Tea Auction every week, 51 weeks in a year, and the trade is so structured in a way that the grades are very standardized with the proper sampling procedures, warehousing, and this therefore has made it possible to attract all the global tea players in Kenya where the tea auction is being managed. The tea trade in Kenya is also dollar denominated, and therefore it means we trade in a very stable currency. I mentioned about the 10 countries that sells their tea through the Mombasa Tea Auction, and you can see Kenya is leading with 74%. Last year, Kenya produced 598 million kilos, followed by Malawi, 49. The total production from Africa was 804 million kilos, still below what India produced last year at 1.3 billion kilos. Unfortunately, Africa exported 90% of the 804 billion kilos. And I'm glad that James had showed you the trends. That therefore means Africa is the largest culprit in terms of creating the imbalance between supply and demand. These are the major market destinations from the Mombasa Tea Auction, with Pakistan leading at 35%, followed by Egypt at 14%, UK at 10%, UAE 5%. Then we have small markets, Russia, and I'm glad that India last year imported 17 million kilos from Kenya, and we would persuade you to import more at 3%. That means that India is becoming a very significant player in the Kenyan tea space. Now, I would like to take you through what influences the prices at the Mombasa Tea Auction. Number one is the quality of tea that is offered in the auction, and I'll show you in the subsequent graphs how quality influences prices directly. We are fortunate enough that we produce tea from different regions, and you will see how the impact of quality dictates the prices of tea in Mombasa auction. Good quality teas fetches better prices. Poor quality teas actually are sold below production cost. Then we have the global demand in terms of supply dynamics. You have been told by James that last year the world produced 7 billion kilos and consumed 6.6 billion. That means there was an oversupply of almost 400 million kilos that was carried over to 2025. Geopolitical factors influences the prices directly. Egypt has mentioned about their dollar challenges. Same to markets like Sudan, where there are conflicts in Sudan. Sudan used to be one of the largest importers of our BP1. There are conflicts there from 2023. We have the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We have the Red Sea conflict, the Middle East conflict, that has drastically resulted to increased logistic costs, because now ships must take longer routes to various market destinations, and that has a direct impact in terms of the activity of the main players in the auction, because they buy and the export takes longer before there's a turnaround in terms of the recovery of their trading funds. The socio-economic aspect of the major tea importing countries from Kenya, Pakistan had dollar challenges, Egypt had currency challenges, and we have changing tastes and preferences from various countries. We have variations in terms of income variation, demographic variations. All this affects the demand of tea and influences prices directly at the Mombasa tea auction. Then we have the climatological factors. I know climate change is a reality that we have to live with, and we must ensure that we institute measures and strategies that will make us to be able to be resilient enough to adapt to the changing climatic environments. It therefore means that in Kenya and other African tea growing countries, climate has become unpredictable. We do get heavy rainfall, poorly distributed, that causes more damage than good. We get prolonged frost situation. We get prolonged drought situation that impact production. And when there is overproduction during good weather, that impacts the supply in the auction, that negatively affects pricing. Then the socio-cultural changes in terms of the changing taste and preferences. I believe you know the current Gen Zs globally, they're not drinking the traditional tea. So this is where we need to come up with serious innovation to make sure that we attract the young generation into the culture of tea drinking. We must ensure that we make tea as sexy as coffee, so that our Gen Zs can take their girlfriends and boyfriends to a tea date as opposed to coffee dates. We must change the story, we must change the trend, and we must ensure that we resonate with our young generation. Last but not least, market diversification. You saw in my previous the bar graph, we have very few traditional markets. Pakistan, 35%. That is a huge risk. Egypt, 14%. Is a huge threat. The more we diversify markets, the better for the tea sector, not just in Kenya alone, but also for India. But for the Indian story, you have a very strong comfort in your population. If the markets don't work for you, you are a market to yourself. If today India increases their consumption by 1 tea bag per day per person, that will increase your local consumption by over 1 billion kilos, and it will make you consume all that you produce within India as a state. So the onus is on us to work on promoting tea to increase both local consumption and export destination. Lastly, product differentiation and innovation, which I've mentioned. We need to innovate more. Kenya or Africa has over-relied on CTCT. We are gradually moving out of that space, and I'm glad to announce that on 24th of September, we are going to launch our first orthodox auction at the Mombasa Tea Auction. I would like to take you through what happened in Kenya for the last 10 years, 2015, 2025. And this is where the problem is. You can see production has gone up. The teas offered, I want you to look at the two graphs. What is produced and what is offered vis-a-vis what is sold, and last is the average price. For some years, production was higher than what is offered and what is sold. Kenya significantly increased production by over 50%. When you analyze Kenya's production vis-a-vis India, India is relatively static and very predictable. Kenya's tea production is completely unpredictable. Within the 10 years, production has increased from 399 million to 598 million kilos in 2024. Look at the green graph, where from 2023, the teas offered is more than production. There is a line, a red line somewhere. Kenya as a country made a mistake of introducing something called reserve price. And I'm putting a disclaimer, don't go that direction. When you see that red line, it was introduced in 2021. The market negatively reacted to it by, first of all, market dip. Then it appreciated. Then thereafter, what happens? What is offered became higher than what is produced by a very significant margin. And last year in 2024, the offers went as high as 900 million kilos. That means if you put a reserve price, that is not commensurate to the value of the tea. The buyers will shy away from buying that tea. The tea will be withdrawn from the auction and re-offered. Tea is not like wine. Black tea loses value with time. The more you withdraw the tea, the more you re-offer it, the more it loses value. There is something called time value of money. Some of the teas that were supposed to fetch above $2.4 in 2021, 2022 ended up being sold at a throwaway price of $1.05. So in these dynamics, it is prudent not to distort the market through price fixing or floor price determination. Allow the invisible market hands to dictate the prices. You can see a lot of tea offered and very little is sold, and that led to a drastic decline in average prices from about $3 in 2017 to $2.02 in 2025. A very significant decline in prices and value. Same scenario. I've given you a scenario of teas offered, then outlots. Look at the red line. When the reserve price was introduced, this is 2024, reserve price was in play, market depressed, the outlot percentages were over 47%. Look at the absorption, very poor. Outlots, very high. Immediately reserve price was removed in October 2024. Look at what happened to prices. Prices drastically improved. The outlots came down. Why? The buyers had an opportunity to compete for tea and pay for the value. That positively improved the prices, improved the auction absorption, and at the same time reduced the outlots. And that is the reason why I gave a disclaimer. Setting a reserve price for India will be a no-go zone. I say that because I've read over the press that India has some intention to do that. You only learn from experience. Once bitten, twice shy. You will not burn your fingers twice. We burnt our fingers, we have learned from it. I want you to look at these figures. George, thank you. I'm summarizing. So our production, exports higher than production, gradual carryover. You can see the production vis-a-vis export, but I'm glad India, you have managed your exports and production consumption. Well, lessons to learn, I'm very brief. Centralize the auction, never implement reserve price, delink politics from tea trade. If you have to, please delink it. Then the Indian challenges, the fragmented auction, please centralize it. Then opportunities for you, strengthen the auction centralization, adopt Mombasa style of transparency and uniformity, increase global buyer participation, and lastly, invest in digital transformation. Last but not least, don't worry about the American tariff. You are able to consume what you produce as a country. Thank you.